Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where today we're going to be talking about one of the ways it's been made easier for us to enjoy our old games. That is, the engine remake. While playing games like these isn't too difficult if you happen to have the right hardware and software, it can be quite tricky if you don't. You might have to rely on emulation, which can be a bit fiddly to set up and might require a lot of resources to do so. For some gamers, that wasn't good enough, and so they reverse engineered the game to discover how it worked, and then would make a drop-in replacement for the game executable. We tend to call these engine remakes. And they are distinct to source ports, as these developers rarely, if ever, had access to the actual source code of the game. But they are similar in that they are designed to work with the original data that came with the game, and these would normally be written in newer libraries, languages, and practices so they could be easily upgraded and ported. As you still needed the game data, which would include the maps, graphics, and audio, you would still need to buy or get the game if you wanted to play it. Now there are quite a lot of these, so I can't cover them all, but what I can do is go over the ones that I can't live without, my favourites if you will. So, presented in no real order, we have Scumvm is the biggest and possibly most well-known engine remake around, though saying it's an engine remake might be underselling it a little bit these days, as it started off life recreating the Scum engine which was used for the LucasArts point-and-click games. Now these included Monkey Island, Summer Max, Full Throttle, and many more. But due to the fact the engine was changed and improved on for each game, it needed to be coded in a way that would support multiple different versions of the game and the engine. As you had some games that showed up on a range of platforms, each with their own little changes, which resulted in designing a program that could detect and use the right version. Now this lended itself very nicely to be extended and have new engines added, ones that were not based on Scum. Some of these continued to be reverse engineered, but increasingly they were actually given the source code for some of these games, which made the process of adding these engines far easier. This in turn meant that some of these games could actually be sold again, and without needing to emulate the older hardware. Many of those older point-and-click games that you see on GOG actually use Scumvm to power them. It's an amazing project, and it's great that I can play the Amiga or PC version of Monkey Island. There's even the option of taking the VGA edition of Monkey Island, taking the CD soundtrack from another one, and then adding in the talkie voices from the special edition.
Hi, my name's Guybrush Threepwood and I want to be a pirate.
Yikes! Don't sneak up on me like that!
Which makes for the perfect version of the game, as the special edition only allowed you to use voices if you also used that new artwork. And yeah, that artwork and interface just didn't do it for me. It is something they thankfully rectified for the special edition of Monkey Island 2. Development is still very active, with either new engines directly getting added or other projects merging in, and with more and more fancy games being added all the time, like Blade Runner. OpenTTD, or Open Transport Tycoon Deluxe, is an open source recreation of Transport Tycoon Deluxe. The hint was in its name. This is another old but still actively developed project, having started around 2003. And in that time things have changed quite a lot. In the early versions it was all about recreating TTD as closely as possible, with you needing to provide the graphics and audio from the base game to be able to play it. But as the project continued, new spin-offs were started. First with recreating the graphics so you didn't have to buy the original, and then even making their own new sound and music. There's even multiple plugin interfaces for the various areas of the game, and there's a vibrant development scene for extending and expanding it. If you just download or even get it from Steam, you can just start it and it will let you know that it's missing graphics, and it will either allow you to download the open set or tell you how to get the original from the CD. Now the opening menu does have a few new options, which shows off how much the game has been extended. Those plugins mentioned earlier can be found via the online content menu. That'll let you find new maps, scenarios, AI, sound and graphics and all sorts. and they can all be downloaded directly from this menu. You don't have to manually download anything at all, it can all be done through the game. There is also a whole new menu for settings that have toggles for just about everything. Now it can be a little overwhelming for a new player, but you can just skip most of this and just hit new game and get going, which will allow you to play on some truly huge maps, much larger than what was possible back in the day. It's not until you bring up the minimap that you get an idea of the true scale. And in some ways that minimap is less needed, as you can now zoom in and out using the scroll wheel on the main screen. It's a lovely remake that extends everything so you can enjoy it in new ways or just how you remembered it. Though you will most likely start using some of the improvements without realising it, as they fit in so nicely, like being able to just drag out new lines or quickly upgrade them. And as I mentioned, it's also on Steam now for free, so you don't need to worry about keeping it up to date, Steam will do it all for you. Reminiscence is next, and it isn't really active anymore, but that's because it's pretty much done its job. And its job was to make it easier to play Flashback, and it's done that very well. And the source code has been used to bring homebrew ports to many platforms over the years. I remember messing around with this on the DS. To play the game you will need to get some of the data, so you'll need the DOS version for its graphics, but for sound you'll either need the Amiga or the 3DO music files. This does mean that the music doesn't quite line up with some of the cutscenes where they've been changed, but it is still very good. Now overall, this doesn't do too much to improve or extend the game. You can quick save at any point, and if you enable it there's a sort of rewind function, though I've never really gotten it to work all that well. The Windows port has multiple options for how you want to scale it as well, but if you use anything other than the linear nearest neighbour, then you're doing the art a great injustice. But you can use assets from various different versions, like using the 3D movies that came with the PC CD-ROM, along with the voices from the Mega CD edition. But overall, its only real goal was allow you to play the game as it was, and for that it does it very well. In many ways this has been surpassed by some of the newer ports that included much nicer rewind features, but if you just want to quickly play Flashback again, this is a very good way of doing it. The next engine remake is an unknown. That's because it's XCOM, with Open XCOM. This is an engine remake that I've only recently started playing, but it was absolutely fun to do so. There have been a number of failed and aborted attempts at doing engine remakes of XCOM in the past, with various levels of success, but it does feel like Open XCOM is here to stay. Not only can it play the original UFO Enemy Unknown, but it can also play the follow-up Terror from the Deep. Again, you still need to use the original assets, so the game will look exactly as it did, but now you can increase the resolution so you can see far more of the action, or you can use scaling to keep that same claustrophobic feel as before. But now there's a bunch of small quality of life improvements, like being able to sack soldiers while checking out their stats, rather than how I used to do it, renaming them and then sacking them from the cell screen. It also has something that's starting to become quite common, a whole range of mods that change up the game. And some of them are actually quite expansive, like the XCOM files, that starts you off with just 2 soldiers and a car and will lead you all the way through up until the XCOM that we all know. Though others are much smaller, but also quite nice, like having updated explosion effects, or adding some new weapons. And even if you don't want to download any of these mods, it does come with a few that really are quite useful. Like having it always be day or night, or even been able to turn off the psionics. And even without all of that, the built-in options are quite large, so you can tweak the game to your heart's content. It really is a great little project, and if you've not tried XCOM before, this is a great place to start. And for the last project, I want to mention Corsics-TH, which I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but either way, this is an engine remake of Theme Hospital. Interestingly, this project took a slightly different approach to most of the others that we've mentioned, as large parts of the game logic were not done in code, but in script, and Lua script to be precise. This means it's much easier for others to edit and change parts of the game, as well as contribute to the project. You still have to buy a copy of the game and grab the original assets, so it will look exactly as you remember it, but interestingly it has an experimental support for reading the data straight from an ISO file, which will make it a little bit easier to play, as you don't have to extract everything first to get it going. And as it uses Lua and a number of basic file formats, it's actually quite easy for new scenarios and maps to be created. And they even included a level editor so you can make your own. Now, as we know, I like a good level editor, so this is great fun to mess around with. Now currently, there doesn't seem to be a robust system in place to share these like OpenXCOM or OpenTTD, but I'm sure they have thoughts along those lines as the project is still quite active. They also include a number of other tools like the animation viewer that lets you check out the weird animations that came with the game. So if you're ever in the mood to pop a few heads in the inflator room, then this is a great way to go about it. There are many more of these projects out there. Some of them are still quite active in their development, while others have all but stopped. But that isn't always a problem if those projects have more or less done. But there are those projects that stopped just shy of completion, which are always painful to find. Thankfully, while many of these start off as personal projects, they end up being built up by a community of developers, and they end up moving to a more open development style so others can take over when life gets in the way. The dedication required to reverse engineer a game and then make an engine remake has always amazed me, so if there's any that I've missed that are your favourites, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to check them out. So until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was future-proofing our games, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below. You know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.